The knock rattled my front door at exactly 2:47 a.m. I know the time because I'd been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until morning. Three sharp raps, then silence, then a sound that froze my blood, sobbing. My feet hit the floor. Cold hardwood shocked my bare soles as I ran down the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. My hands shook as I grabbed the doorknob. When I yanked that door open, I didn't recognize the woman standing there. Purple bloomed across her left cheek like spilled wine. Her right eye had swollen completely shut, the lid puffy and dark. Dried blood crusted beneath her nose. She wore nothing but a thin nightgown, in March, and her bare feet left crimson smears on my welcome mat. "Mama," Cordelia whispered. "Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is." Then her knees buckled. I caught her before she hit the ground. My daughter, my vibrant, strong daughter, weighed nothing, just paper and bones collapsing into my arms. I dragged her inside, kicking the door shut with my heel. Her head lolled against my shoulder. Each step toward the guest room felt like carrying a ghost. I laid her on the bed as gently as I could. She flinched anyway, whimpered when my hand brushed her shoulder. That's when I saw them. Purple fingerprints circling her throat like a necklace. 5 distinct marks on each side, thumbs pressed into her windpipe. My stomach lurched. "He didn't mean it," Cordelia whispered, her good eye barely open. "He's just stressed. Work has been... Sleep now." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "We'll talk tomorrow." But I knew, oh God, I knew those words. I'd said them myself 40 years ago about my first husband, before I learned that men who hurt you once will hurt you 1,000 times. Before I understood that love without safety isn't love at all. Cordelia's eye fluttered closed. Her breathing evened out, but her face twisted even in sleep. Nightmares already taking hold. I stood in the doorway watching her. My baby girl, my only child, broken and bleeding in my guest room because some man decided his fists were answers to questions nobody asked. The room tilted. I gripped the door frame to steady myself. Cordelia's lips barely moved. She whispered one more thing, so quiet I almost missed it. "Mama, he's going to kill me next time." Then silence. Just her shallow breathing in the dark guest room. I walked to my kitchen, flipped on the light. Put coffee on even though my hands shook so badly I spilled grounds across the counter. The clock above the sink ticked too loud. Each second felt like a hammer blow. Dawn bled through my windows, pink and orange painting the sky. Beautiful. Wrong. How could the world be beautiful when my daughter looked like that? I sat at my kitchen table as the sun rose, staring at my phone. I knew what I had to do. One call. Just one call would start everything. Set wheels in motion that couldn't be stopped. But first, I needed to know exactly who I was destroying. I scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I swore I'd never use again. My thumb hovered over it. Once I pressed this button, there was no going back. I pressed dial. Cordelia slept for 16 hours straight. I didn't sleep at all. I stood in her doorway every hour, watching her breathe, making sure she was still alive. Every whimper made me flinch. Every time she curled into herself, pulling away from invisible blows, my jaw clenched tighter. Purple bruises darkened by the hour. What had been wine-colored last night turned deep plum, almost black around the edges. Her swollen eye looked worse in daylight. The white part was completely red. Blood vessels burst from impact. When she finally emerged from the guest room, she moved like a wounded animal, slow, testing each step before putting weight on it. One hand braced against the wall, the other wrapped around her ribs. I'd made scrambled eggs, toast with butter, orange juice. Set it all on the table like this was a normal Sunday morning, like my daughter wasn't covered in bruises shaped like her husband's hands. She sat down carefully, picked up her fork, pushed eggs around her plate without eating. "Tell me," I said. She shook her head. Fresh tears spilled down her battered face, tracking through the dried blood I hadn't cleaned yet. "Cordelia May." I used her full name. The name I gave her 32 years ago when she came into this world screaming and perfect. "Tell me everything." Her fork clattered against the plate. Her good eye met mine. Something cracked open behind it. The story came out in pieces. Fragments, like broken glass cutting her throat with every word. 6 months ago. That's when it started. Small things first. Brock coming home late. Work meetings, he said. But his collar smelled like perfume. Sweet. Floral. Nothing Cordelia wore. When she asked questions, he got defensive. Angry, slammed doors, punched walls. Then he'd cry, apologize. Shower her with flowers and promises it would never happen again. He was just stressed. Work was killing him. She was the only good thing in his life. She believed him. Then came the first push. An accident, he called it. He'd been drinking, some project at work going wrong. She'd asked the wrong question at the wrong time. His hand shot out, connected with her shoulder. She hit the kitchen counter, bruised her hip so badly she couldn't sit for a week. He sobbed afterward, on his knees, begging forgiveness, swearing on his mother's grave it would never happen again. It happened again. And again. Each time worse than the last. Push became shove. Shove became slap. Slap became punch. Punch became... "Who is she?" I asked. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. Cordelia's good eye met mine. Something harder than fear lived there now. Something sharp. Her name is Vivian Cross. She works in his office, marketing director. How long? 8 months. Her voice cracked like ice. He wants to leave me for her, but she's married. Doesn't want to lose her lifestyle. Big house. Rich husband. Country club membership. So Brock stays with me and takes his anger out on... She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. My hands gripped my coffee mug. The ceramic creaked under pressure. If I squeezed any harder, it would shatter. He said last night was my fault, Cordelia continued. Her voice had gone flat, dead. Said I embarrassed him at the company dinner. Wore the wrong dress, navy blue instead of black. Talked too much to his boss's wife, laughed too loud. When we got home, she touched her swollen eye, winced. He said Vivian would never be so stupid. The coffee mug exploded in my hands. Ceramic shards clattered across the table. Brown liquid spread like blood. Pain bloomed hot across my palm where a piece had sliced deep. Red mixed with brown, I didn't feel it. All I felt was white-hot fury burning so bright it consumed everything else. My vision narrowed. My breath came short and sharp. Cordelia gasped, "Mama, you're bleeding. Tell me more about Vivian." My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like something cold and ancient crawling up from a deep place. Cordelia grabbed a dish towel, pressed it to my bleeding hand, kept talking. Vivian Cross, 35. Beautiful in that polished, expensive way. Designer clothes, perfect hair, nails always done. She'd started at Brock's company 2 years ago, climbed fast. Marketing director within 18 months. She and Brock had been working late together. Strategy sessions, they called it. Planning campaigns, building presentations. Innocent at first, then drinks after work, then dinners, then hotel rooms. 8 months of lies. Brock wanted to leave, wanted to make it official with Vivian, start fresh. But Vivian had said no. She liked her life. Liked her rich husband who traveled for work and left her alone. Liked the big house and the luxury cars and the jewelry. She'd keep Brock on the side, keep him wanting. But she wouldn't let him leave his wife. So Brock stayed trapped, angry, desperate. And every time Viviana rejected him, every time she reminded him he was just her secret, he came home and made Cordelia pay for it. The company dinner had been last week. Vivian had been there with her husband. Brock had watched her all night, watched her laugh with other people, touch her husband's arm, pretend Brock didn't exist. He'd driven home in silence. Cordelia had tried to make conversation, told him she thought the dinner went well, that his presentation had been impressive. He'd exploded. Wrong dress, wrong words, wrong everything. Why couldn't she be more like Vivian? Why was she so stupid, so embarrassing, so useless? Then his fist had done the talking. My phone buzzed on the table. Then again, and again. Brock, 23 times that first day, 41 the second. We didn't answer. The voicemails piled up. Sorry, so sorry, baby, please. It would never happen again. He loved her, needed her, would get help, would be better. Lies, every single word. On the third day, flowers arrived. The doorbell rang at noon. I opened it to find a delivery man holding 24 red roses. Deep crimson. Probably cost him $200. The card read, "Come home. I'm dying without you." Cordelia stood behind me, stared at the roses. Her face went white. "Mama," she whispered, "maybe I should—" "No." I took the roses, walked them straight to my kitchen, opened the trash can. Then I did something that made Cordelia gasp. I snapped each stem, one by one, systematic, methodical, petals scattered across my kitchen floor like blood drops. 24 roses reduced to garbage in under 3 minutes. Cordelia's good eye was wide. "He's going to be so angry." "Let him." I threw the last stem in the trash, wiped my hands on my jeans. "Let him be angry at me." Then I pulled out my phone. Scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in 5 years. Felix Kane, private investigator, my brother-in-law, the man who owed me a favor after I'd helped put his daughter through college. My thumb hovered over his name. Once I made this call, there was no going back. I'd be setting something in motion, something that couldn't be stopped or undone. I pressed dial. "Felix," I said when he answered. "It's Lorraine. I need everything on a man named Brock Hendricks. Employment records, financial statements, phone records if you can get them. Everything." Silence on the other end. Then, "How soon?" "Yesterday." Felix chuckled, dark and knowing. "Give me 48 hours. I hung up, looked at Cordelia. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. "Mama, what are you doing?" I thought about my first husband. About the night I'd finally left him, my face looking much like Cordelia's did now. About my sister who'd tried the police route. Restraining order, court dates, legal protection that meant nothing when he showed up at her house with a baseball bat. She'd survived. Barely. Punctured lung, broken ribs. 3 months in the hospital. I'd learned something important back then. Something I'd never forgotten. Police reports weren't enough. Legal protection was paper. Words and signatures that meant nothing to men who'd already decided violence was their language. No, I needed something stronger. "What am I doing?" I repeated her question. Smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. "I'm making sure Brock Hendricks regrets the day he ever laid hands on my daughter." Cordelia's breath caught. Fear flickered across her face. But underneath it, something else. Something that looked almost like hope. That night, I sat beside Cordelia's bed. She'd been sleeping better, color returning to her cheeks. The swelling around her eye had gone down enough that she could open it partway. We hadn't talked much that day. She'd stayed quiet, watchful, like she was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. Moonlight cut through the window, painting silver stripes across the guest room floor. Cordelia lay propped against pillows, one hand resting on her healing ribs. "Mama," she said quietly, "I think I made a terrible mistake coming here." My heart clenched. "What?" "What if he finds me? What if he comes here and—" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "What if he hurts you?" I reached for her hand, careful around the bruises on her wrist. Her bones felt like bird bones under my fingers, and fragile, breakable. "Baby, I said. My voice came out hard, steel wrapped in velvet. "Let him try." Something in my eyes made her breath catch, made her stare at me like I was a stranger. This wasn't the mother who baked cookies and sent birthday cards, who showed up to every school play and soccer game, who cried at wedding vows and baby showers. This was someone else. Someone dangerous. Someone who'd done this before. My first husband's name had been Martin. We'd married young, me 19, him 22. He'd been charming at first, flowers and compliments and promises of forever. The first time he hit me, I was 21, pregnant with Cordelia. I'd burned dinner. He'd backhanded me across the kitchen. I'd hit the floor, tasted blood. He'd cried after, begged forgiveness. I'd believed him. 5 years of that. 5 years of making excuses, wearing long sleeves in summer, smiling through split lips, telling myself it would get better, that he'd change, that I could fix him with enough love and patience. Then one night, he'd wrapped his hands around my throat, squeezed until my vision went black at the edges. Cordelia had been 6 years old, asleep upstairs. I'd clawed at his hands, kicked, fought. He'd let go eventually, walked out, left me gasping on the floor. That's when I knew he was going to kill me. Maybe not that night, but someday. And Cordelia would find my body. I'd called my sister, packed a bag while Martin was at work the next day, took Cordelia and ran, filed for divorce through a lawyer I could barely afford, spent 2 years looking over my shoulder. But I'd survived. I'd learned something important. You can't reason with men who use their fists instead of their words. You can't fix them. You can't love them into being better. You can only remove their ability to hurt you. Mama? Cordelia's voice pulled me back, and you have that look again, like you're somewhere else. I'm right here, baby. I squeezed her hand gently. And I made a promise to myself a long time ago, never again. Not to me, not to my daughter, not to anyone I love. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, that I'm going to make sure Brock Hendricks can never hurt you again. Not now. Not ever. Cordelia's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away, didn't argue. Tell me what to do, she whispered. Exactly 48 hours later, Felix arrived at my door. He carried a manila folder so thick it barely closed. The edges bulged with papers. His face was grim. We spread everything across my dining room table like a war map. Bank statements, text messages printed on paper, photos, receipts, email records. Felix had gotten it all. You're not going to like this, he said. I pulled out my reading glasses. Show me. He started with the bank statements, Brock's personal account, the one Cordelia supposedly had access to as his wife. Except there were withdrawals she'd never made, hundreds of dollars at a time, sometimes thousands. Felix pointed to the dates. These started 8 months ago, always on Fridays, always late afternoon. After work, I said. Right. He pulled out more documents. Cross-referenced them with Brock's credit card statements. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, always for 2 people. Never with Cordelia. Cordelia stood behind me. I felt her body go rigid. Felix spread out more papers. But it gets worse. These aren't his only accounts. He showed me offshore transactions, money moving through shell companies. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 1,000 there, building slowly over months. Total, nearly $60,000. Where is it coming from? I asked, though I already knew. His company, he's been embezzling. Felix's jaw was tight. Moving money from client accounts into his personal holdings. Doctoring the books. Covering his tracks. My blood ran cold. How has nobody noticed? Felix pulled out a photo. Brock and Vivian, restaurant, 3 weeks ago. Her hand on his across the table. Both laughing. Between them, a laptop screen showed company financial records clear as day. Because he's not working alone. Vivian Cross, marketing director, the mistress. But she was more than that. Felix laid out her role. She had access to client accounts through her position. She'd been helping Brock cook the books, moving money, covering tracks, taking her cut of everything. They'd been stealing together. But here's the real twist, Felix said. He pulled out another document, marriage certificate. Vivian Cross isn't married. Cordelia made a sound like she'd been punched. That was a lie, Felix continued. She told Brock she was married to keep him under control, keep him desperate, Keep him trapped between his wife and his mistress. Keep him violent. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Vivian kept Brock wanting something he couldn't have, kept him angry, kept him taking that anger out on Cordelia instead of walking away from the whole scheme. Cordelia had been the pressure valve, the outlet for rage Vivian was deliberately creating. "There's more," Felix said. He pulled out one final photograph. Restaurant scene again. But this time, I focused on the background. A man in his 70s, silver hair, expensive suit, watching Brock and Vivian from 3 tables away. His face was stone. "Who is that?" I asked. "Reginald Thorne, company VP. Been there 40 years. He was at that restaurant with his wife." Felix tapped the photo. He saw them, saw the laptop, got suspicious. That's when he called me. My heart started racing. "Called you?" "Asked me to investigate quietly. Company theft suspicions. Didn't want scandal unless he had proof." Felix met my eyes. "He gave me permission to share all of this with you. Said if you have proof of domestic violence, he wants to know. Said it changes everything." "Changes how?" "Prosecution, character evidence, pattern of behavior." Felix leaned forward. "This VP could fire Brock. Press criminal charges for the embezzlement. But if he knows about the abuse too, if he knows Brock and Vivian were stealing from the company while Brock was beating his wife, he could destroy them," I finished. "He could destroy them," Felix confirmed. "Both of them, criminal charges, prison time, complete ruin." Cordelia's hand found my shoulder, gripped tight. "But he needs solid evidence of the abuse," Felix said. "Photos, medical records, documentation. Can you get that?" I looked up at Cordelia. Her face was pale, frightened. But underneath the fear, something else was growing, something hard and bright, rage, pure and clean and righteous. "Yes," she said, her voice didn't shake. "Tell me what you need." That night, Cordelia and I sat in the guest room. Moonlight painted everything silver and cold. "I need you to do something brave," I told her. She looked at me, waiting. "Document everything. Every bruise, every broken bone, every hospital visit you hid from me." I held her gaze. "Photos? Medical records?" "All of it." "Mama, I can't." "Yes, you can." I took her hand, gentle. "I found out what Brock has been doing. Him and that woman. They've been stealing. But I need your help to make sure he pays for everything. Not just the money. Everything." Understanding dawned in her eyes, then something I hadn't seen in weeks. Strength. "Tell me what to do," she said. It took 3 days to build the case. Cordelia was better at record keeping than she'd realized. She'd been documenting her own abuse without meaning to. A hidden folder on her phone, photos she'd taken of bruises, thinking maybe someday she'd need proof, text messages she'd been too afraid to delete, where Brock apologized after each beating, medical bills from emergency rooms 3 towns over, where nobody would recognize her. We organized everything chronologically. Started with the first push 6 months ago, ended with last week's beating that sent her to my door at 2:47 a.m. The timeline was perfect. Damning. Violence escalating in perfect parallel with the embezzlement. As Brock stole more money, he hit harder. As Vivian took more control, Cordelia's injuries got worse. I created a leather binder, professional, organized with tabs, bank statements in one section, medical records in another, text messages printed and highlighted, photos of Cordelia's injuries, each one dated and annotated, every piece cross-referenced, every date checked and double-checked. As we organized the final document, Cordelia froze, stared at her phone. "Mama," her voice was strange. "I forgot about this." She pressed play on an audio file. 2 months old. Her phone had been in her purse during one of Brock's rages. The recording was muffled but clear enough. Brock's voice screaming, words slurring together. Vivian says I'm weak for staying with you. Says a real man wouldn't put up with this. Says I should just leave. But I can't leave until we move the rest of the money. Do you understand? I'm stuck with you. Stuck. And it's making me crazy. It's making me... A crash, Cordelia's scream, then silence. We listened without speaking. When it ended, Cordelia's hands were shaking. He said all of that, she whispered. Admitted the affair, the money, everything. And I forgot I had it. I added the recording to the binder, flagged it, highlighted the timestamps where Brock mentioned Vivian and the money. Perfect. The next morning, I closed the binder, ran my hand over the leather cover. Everything was inside, every piece of evidence we needed. I looked at Cordelia. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling Reginald Thorne. Her hand trembled as she touched the binder, traced the edge. Mama, what if this doesn't work? What if they don't believe us? I thought about Martin, my first husband, how I'd run with nothing but a bag and my daughter in hope, how I'd survive but barely, says. How my sister had tried the legal route and ended up in the hospital. This was different. This was proof, evidence, documentation that couldn't be argued with or explained away. Oh, baby. My smile was cold, sharp. This is going to work. By tomorrow night, Brock Hendricks won't know what hit him. Reginald Thorne's office overlooked the city from 40 floors up. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany desk, leather chairs. The kind of office that cost more than most people's houses. I sat across from him, the binder on the desk between us. He was 70 with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. The kind of man who'd built empires and buried competitors. That morning, I'd called him directly. Mr. Thorne, my name is Lorraine Bennett. Your investigator, Felix Kane, shared some information with me regarding my son-in-law, Brock Hendricks. Yes, his voice had been grave. Felix mentioned you might be calling. I have additional evidence I believe you'll find relevant to your case against Mr. Hendricks. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves Brock Hendricks is not only a thief, but a man who beats his wife to cover up his crimes and his infidelity. The kind that shows he's been using my daughter as an emotional punching bag while he and Vivian Cross rob your company blind. Silence on the other end. Then, can you be at my office in 2 hours? I'll be there in 1. Now I sat in his office, opened the binder, started walking him through everything. The affair, the embezzlement, the abuse. How Vivian manipulated Brock. How Brock used Cordelia as his outlet for rage he couldn't direct at Vivian. How the violence escalated in perfect parallel with the theft. Thorne listened without interrupting. I turned each page methodically. Bank statements showing the money trail. Text messages between Brock and Vivian about keeping the wife quiet. Medical records showing Cordelia's repeated injuries. Photos that made Thorne's jaw tighten. The audio recording of Brock admitting everything. When I finished, silence filled the office. Heavy, thick. Thorne closed the binder, leaned back in his leather chair, steepled his fingers. The silence stretched. 30 seconds, 45, 1 full minute. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it. Finally, he spoke. Mrs. Bennett. His voice was quiet, controlled, lethal. What you've brought me today is enough to bury both of them. I didn't breathe. Criminal charges for embezzlement. Civil suits for damages, and with the domestic violence evidence, the district attorney will push for maximum sentencing. He paused, met my eyes. Prison time. Years, not months. How many years? My voice came out steady. 10, 12, maybe more, depending on the judge. He tapped the binder. Is that what you want? I thought about Cordelia's face covered in bruises, her whimpers in the night, her broken voice saying, he didn't mean it, even as purple fingerprints marked her throat. I thought about all the other women these two might hurt if they walked free, if they learned they could steal and lie and beat people and face no consequences. Yes, I said. That's exactly what I want. Thorne moved like a shark who'd smelled blood in the water. By 6 p.m. that same evening, he'd already made calls, lawyers, pie. The district attorney, corporate security, setting everything in motion with mechanical precision. By 8 p.m., police were at Brock's office building. Unmarked cars, detectives in suits, moving fast and coordinated. By 9 p.m., handcuffs were clicking closed. Brock sat at his desk when they arrived. End of the day, he was probably planning to go home. Maybe call Vivian. Maybe wonder why Cordelia still wasn't answering his calls. Two detectives walked in, read him his rights, told him to stand up, put his hands behind his back. 2 floors down, Vivian got the same treatment. No warning, no chance to run or call lawyers or warn each other. Simultaneous arrests, coordinated strike. Felix called me at 9:17 p.m. It's done. I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. Didn't say anything for a long moment. Both of them? I finally asked. Both of them. Fraud charges, embezzlement, conspiracy, for Brock, additional domestic violence and assault charges. Felix paused. You did good, Lorraine. Real good. I hung up, walked to the guest room. Cordelia was reading. She looked up when I entered. They arrested him, I said quietly. Tonight. Him and Vivian. The book slipped from her hands. Her face went white, then red, then tears started streaming. But these tears were different. Not pain, not fear, relief. She sobbed like something was breaking open inside her, like poison draining from a wound. I held her until the shaking stopped. The story hit local news the next morning. I made coffee, set 2 cups on the table, turned on the TV. Local business professionals arrested in embezzlement scheme, the anchor said. Photos of Brock and Vivian in handcuffs flashed across the screen. Brock Hendricks and Vivian Cross, both employees at Thornton Enterprises, were arrested last night on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Sources say the pair stole nearly $60,000 over 8 months. Hendricks faces additional charges related to domestic violence. Cordelia watched in silence. Tears tracked down her healing face. The bruises had faded to yellow-green. Her eye was open again. She looked more like herself. He's really in jail, she whispered. He's really in jail, I confirmed. She cried. Quiet tears this time, clean, like rain washing away poison. My phone rang 3 days later. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me press the green button. Silence on the other end. Then heavy breathing. Then a voice that made my blood run cold. You did this. Brock's voice. Barely controlled rage simmering underneath. You destroyed my life. I said nothing. I know it was you. His voice rose. Cordelia wouldn't have done this alone. You put her up to it. You convinced her to lie. To make up stories. To ruin me. Is that what you tell yourself? I asked calmly. When I get out of here, the threat hung in the air, my voice cut through his rage like ice. You're not getting out, Brock, not for a very long time. You don't know that. My lawyer says, your lawyer is lying to you. I stood up, walked to my window, looked out at the sunny day. You want to know the beautiful part? It wasn't revenge. It was just one phone call, one conversation. And your whole world collapsed because of what you did. You beat my daughter, you stole from your company, you lied to everyone who trusted you. My voice stayed calm, cold. You did this to yourself, Brock. I just made sure you faced the consequences. I hung up, blocked the number, looked at Cordelia, who stood in the doorway listening. He can't hurt you anymore, baby. I pulled her into a hug. No one can. But the trial was still coming. And that's when the real justice would begin. 8 months later, I walked into the courthouse. The building was old, stone and marble, cold even though it was summer. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Hard wooden benches lined the halls. I'd been here every single day of the trial. Front row, never missing a moment. The courtroom filled slowly. Lawyers in suits. Jury members filing in. Spectators curious about the case that had been all over local news. Brock sat at the defense table on the left. Vivian at a separate table on the right. They weren't allowed to sit together. Co-conspirators couldn't coordinate their defense. Brock had lost weight. His suit hung loose on his frame, dark circles under his eyes. He looked older, smaller. Nothing like the man who'd cried during his wedding vows 6 years ago. Vivian wore a conservative dress, pearl earrings, hair pulled back, playing the role of innocent professional wrongly accused. But her eyes gave her away, hard, calculating, constantly scanning the room for advantage. The trial had been brutal. Prosecutors laid out the case piece by piece, financial records displayed on screens, money trails highlighted in red, and emails between Brock and Vivian discussing how to hide transactions, text messages about moving funds, photos of them at restaurants with company laptops open between them. Brock's lawyer tried the manipulation defense. My client was influenced by Ms. Cross, who used their romantic relationship to coerce him into criminal activity. Vivian's lawyer tried ignorance. My client was unaware of Mr. Hendricks's violent tendencies and believed the financial irregularities were legitimate business transactions. But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. The audio recording of Brock admitting everything, the medical records showing the escalating violence, the perfect timeline connecting theft to abuse. The day they showed Cordelia's injury photos, gasps rippled through the courtroom. Photos on the big screen. Her face swollen and purple, her throat marked with handprints, her body covered in bruises shaped like fists and fingers. Jury members' faces hardened. An older woman in the front row covered her mouth. A middle-aged man closed his eyes and shook his head. Brock tried to look remorseful, dabbed at dry eyes, but nobody bought it. Vivian cried, real tears this time streaming down her face, but they were tears of fear, not remorse. She'd finally realized the walls were closing in. Cordelia's testimony had been powerful. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, spoke clearly, answered every question without hesitation, described the abuse in detail that made the courtroom go silent, explained how the violence got worse as Brock's affair and theft escalated. When Brock's lawyer tried to suggest she was exaggerating, she simply lifted her sleeve, showed the scar on her forearm where Brock had thrown a plate at her. 8 stitches. Emergency room visit she'd hidden from everyone. The lawyer had no response. Reginald Thorne testified about the embezzlement, walked through the financial evidence with precision, explained how Brock and Vivian had stolen from clients, how they'd covered their tracks, how much damage they'd done to the company's reputation. Closing arguments arrived like a storm. The prosecutor stood, pointed at Brock and Vivian. These two people made choices. Every single day, they chose cruelty. They chose greed. They chose to hurt an innocent woman while stealing from the company that trusted them. She paused. Let it sink in. They thought they were smart. Thought they could get away with it. Thought nobody would connect the dots between the theft and the abuse. But the evidence is clear. The pattern is undeniable. They are guilty. She looked at the jury. Now it's your turn to make a choice. Choose justice. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. 4 hours of waiting. Cordelia sat beside me, held my hand so tight my fingers went numb. We didn't talk, just waited. When the buzzer sounded, my heart lurched. Everyone filed back into the courtroom. Jury members' faces were unreadable. The judge entered. Everyone rose. We sat back down. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. The forewoman stood. Older woman, 60-something, steel in her spine. We have, Your Honor. In the case of the state versus Brock Hendricks and Vivian Cross on the charge of embezzlement in the first degree. How do you find? Guilty? On the charge of fraud? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy? Guilty. The forewoman's voice rang clear through the courtroom. Steady, certain. On all counts, we find the defendants guilty. Brock's face went white. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Brock slumped in his chair like someone had cut his strings. Vivian started crying. Real tears this time, desperate. She grabbed her lawyer's sleeve, whispered frantically. He shook his head. The judge thanked the jury, set sentencing for the following week. Cordelia squeezed my hand. Almost over, Mama, almost over. But the sentencing day was when I'd finally breathe again. Sentencing day arrived on a Tuesday morning. The courtroom was packed. Brock's mother sat in the back, tissues clutched in her hand. Vivian's father was there too, stone-faced and grim. Cordelia and I took our usual spot. Front row, the judge entered. Everyone rose, we sat. The judge spoke about the severity of the crimes, about trust betrayed, both in marriage and business, about violence hidden behind a perfect mask, about two people who'd chosen greed and cruelty over decency and honesty. This court takes domestic violence very seriously, the judge said. Mr. Hendricks, you didn't just steal from your employer. You terrorized your wife. You used her as an outlet for rage you couldn't direct elsewhere. The evidence shows a pattern of escalating violence that could have ended in tragedy. Brock stood, tried to speak. The judge held up a hand. You will have a chance to address the court, but first, sentencing. My heart hammered. Brock Hendricks, for your crimes of embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and domestic violence, this court sentences you to 12 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for the first 5 years. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Brock's mother sobbed. Brock himself swayed. His lawyer caught him. 12 years. Vivian Cross, for your crimes of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy, this court sentences you to 9 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for the first 5 years. Vivian's face froze. Shock, disbelief, horror. 9 years. The judge banged the gavel. This court is adjourned. Guards stepped forward, put handcuffs on Brock and Vivian, led them out through the side door. Brock looked back once, his eyes found mine. Hatred burned there, but underneath it, something else. Fear. Good. Cordelia and I walked out of the courthouse into sunlight, warm, bright, the kind of day that made everything feel new. She cried on the courthouse steps, relief pouring out in great shaking sobs. I held her, let her cry until she had nothing left. It's really over, she whispered. It's really over, I confirmed. 3 years have passed since that day. 3 years since I opened my door at 2:47 a.m. and caught my broken daughter. 3 years since I made one phone call that destroyed 2 lives. Cordelia rebuilt herself. New job at a nonprofit helping domestic violence survivors. New apartment in a safe neighborhood with good locks and a doorman. New confidence that shines from her like light. She still comes to Sunday dinner, every week. We sit on my porch with sweet tea, watching the sun set over the garden where she once married a monster. The same garden. But it feels different now. Just roses and tomatoes and herbs. Not haunted anymore, just a garden. Last Sunday, she asked me a question. Mama, do you ever regret it? Making that call? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Turned the question over in my mind like a stone. No, I finally said. The only thing I regret is not teaching you sooner that you deserved better. That love should never leave bruises. She squeezed my hand. You taught me what matters. That we don't have to stay broken. That justice doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it's just one phone call, one choice. One moment of being brave enough to say no more. That's right, baby. That's exactly right. I sipped my sweet tea, watched the sun paint the sky orange and pink. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, I continued. But this wasn't revenge. This was justice. Quiet, calculated, complete. Cordelia nodded. Some people think 12 years is too harsh. Some people, I said, have never watched someone they love sleep in a guest room, whimpering in nightmares, flinching at shadows. Some people have never had to teach their daughter how to look people in the eye again, how to trust again, how to believe she deserved to be treated with basic human dignity. I set my glass down. Brock Hendricks stole that from you. He and Vivian Cross both made their choices. They chose cruelty. They chose greed. They chose to hurt someone I love. And you made sure they faced consequences. Cordelia finished. That's not revenge, I said. That's justice. The sun slipped below the horizon. Darkness crept across the garden, but it wasn't a scary darkness anymore. Just night falling like it always does. Natural, expected, safe. Sometimes the most powerful thing a mother can do is make one call, just one, and watch the entire house of cards collapse. If you've ever been hurt by someone who promised to protect you or watched someone you love suffer in silence, you have more power than you know. To anyone fighting their own battle right now, your story isn't over yet. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. What hit you hardest from Lorraine's story? And if you were in her situation, would you have made that call? Don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen and watch another powerful story from our channel. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.